Hi, I'm Rob Cohen. I'm the director of Triple X, and I welcome you to this multi-featured DVD of my film. Here, as you see, was distributed by Columbia, but it was made and financed by Revolution Studios, a wonderfully enlightened company that sought me out to do this. 3 weeks before the release of The Fast and the Furious, I got this script from Todd Garner at Revolution and asked me to read it. Thought it was a very interesting action film, as he put it. I read Rich Wilkes' first draft and I thought, the extreme sports world or the action sports world collides with the spy adventure. That's probably the fucking greatest idea that I've ever heard in terms of a concept, a place to begin. I had loved the early James Bond films and had enjoyed so many of those experiences with Sean Connery and the kind of thrills and iconographic filmmaking that occurred in the early 60s and the Kennedy era and the values of the Kennedy era. And I thought, well, if we could somehow do a Tony Hawk 720 and pirouette right off that tradition into a new world, we would make a film that was in fact original. Here in the first scene, this is not in any way a put down of Bond. It's actually an homage. It's actually saying, here's a man in a tuxedo. That was once de rigueur. That was once elegant. But on stage is a group called Rammstein, a German techno metal or industrial metal band that I had first seen in Berlin 4 years ago and thought the theatrical power of this band was amazing. And the vibration they emitted was of a new world. And a man in a tux trying to deal with a tattooed, dirty, dangerous, uncivilized world was the perfect metaphor for the beginning of this film and for the tradition that we were leaving and to the new land to which we were departing. In this scene, I call it the tuxedo killed him. If you look around at the environment, you'll see that this guy is what one would call an easy target. As an agent, American agent in this case, trying to transmit some intercepted computer chip somewhere, and this film begins to become about something involved with that chip. Martin Chalkish, this is Asia Argento. Martin is from New Zealand and an unknown actor here in America, but a man of amazing talent and dedication and focus. And Asia, quite a star in Italy and France and various places in Europe, but also a fresh face to the American audience. Here was one of my first laughs when I was developing it. It was like, what would happen if a guy was assassinated in a great Hitchcock tradition in a performance situation? It used to be in like an opera house. And in fact, the death of the guy, they body surf him right off the stage and don't notice that it's any different than any of the other extremity of the film. And yes, that green drink is called absinthe. It's illegal in the United States. It's lit like that, and it's drunk by strong men and women everywhere. Anyway, we're now in Washington, and here is a kind of shot that I like to do that I started to develop in The Fast and Furious, which is let's travel through impassable barriers and find ways to introduce character. First, Sam Jackson the way you know him, and Sam Jackson terribly scarred. And here we are in the world of the NSA, the National Security Agency. It truly exists. It's not the CIA. One is not certain what the NSA does, but we know they do something. This is also an interesting part to me before I get into talking about the King of Cool, Sam Jackson. I felt in the post 9/11 trauma, the bite at our psyche, that the intelligence community would become much more important. It's much more important to intercept pilots training, Arab pilots training to fly jets in Miami before they get into the jets than it is to figure out how to react to it after they've done what they did. So I think that the spy adventure movie is actually aligning correctly in the zeitgeist of our time, and that these are going to be our future heroes or our present heroes as we realize that security is very much instrumental, and that the intelligence community is our key to security, our first line of defense. Jackson, I've wanted to work with him forever, and one of the interesting stories is he told me after he got this part and we did this deal and all the things that go in, that we'd actually worked together before. I said, I know, come on, Sam, I would have remembered that. He says, yeah. He says, I was your location scout in Georgia in 1975 when you produced the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings, and I was a starving actor. And I said, well, you're not starving anymore, and I'm no longer a producer. I'm proud to be a director. Producing what I call a really good sham character, a right-wing senator, a dickhead, and consequently named Dick Hotchkiss. His license plate says, vote for Dick. And of course, eventually, this is going to be part of the fodder for Xander Cage's humor. There is the icon, not only the triple X on the neck, but the man himself, Vin Diesel, my friend and the most amazing new star on the whole scene, international scene. Vin is like a bear. I've said this before. He's cuddly and fascinating, but if he gets up on his hind legs, you better run. Of character, the cluster of characteristics of him being both terrifying and physical, sweet and soulful, articulate, intelligent, and, oddly vulnerable. That twinkle in his eye, that's a cluster that I don't identify with any other actor. Plus, I think this country and the world has hungered for a decade to find a face that represents the complex multiculturalism, the tribal nature of our society, and to find a multi-ethnic a representative of all the hopes and dreams of people who are not part of the traditional culture, whatever that may be. And Vin Diesel, in my opinion, is that face. So, more than a talented actor, more than a man with a cluster of characteristics, he's riding the upthrust of the changes in American society, and this makes him an incredibly potent force. Ad-lib from Vin, that's the only education we got, and I cracked up in the back of the car because I thought, he is Xander Cage. He's dialed in, because this was the first day of shooting, and I thought, everything I did when I said I would not make this movie without Vin Diesel, when it was very lucrative for me to do it, and I wouldn't do it without him, and finally we managed to get him into it, and all of the things done with the deal. I looked at that improv and I went, I was right. And from this day forward, I just saw him emerge greater and greater. This is the Forest Hills Bridge up in Sacramento. It's the third highest bridge in the United States. It was built because they expected to dam this canyon and fill it with water. They never did the project. Consequently, this crazy bridge is 716 feet above the river. This stunt was done for real once with 18 cameras, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, video, and of course, Panavision 35 millimeter cameras. There was no doubt in my mind that I did not want to do a stunt that had never been done before, a base jump off a falling car. We didn't understand the dynamics exactly. I didn't want to do that 2 times, and we didn't. So what you're watching here is a true multimedia exploration of a stunt, and you're going to begin to see a new editing style for stunts where we don't do it in
Sorry for rewinded.
Where we don't do it in natural time. We do it in what I call the cubist approach, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the drug farm and to the first motocross freestyle jumps. This sequence, one of the things that happened is Vin got sick, and we weren't able to go to Sacramento with him. So if you see here, that isn't Vin. That's Tim Rigby, the championship base jumper that did the jump in a Vin mask with Vin's voice. That's Rick Thorne, Carey Hart, and of course the great Tony Hawk to the rescue. We used a lot of action sports stars in this film, especially in this next sequence, to create the credibility of our star, of our new character, Xander Cage, that he actually comes from the X Games world, which is, again, like the street racing world, it's a subculture that has revolutionized American society with its style, its lifestyle, its clothes, its music, its sound, its pure beauty, and its guts. Here, Eve, our queen of hip hop, comes in to play Xander's manager and partner. That's Mike. Everyone knows, gold medalist there. And here's Ricky Thorne again, dean of the X Games world, in terms of his BMX biking revolution, all the stunts he pulled, and all the insight he gave us. I once interviewed Matt in the first exploration of this project, and I said, "You know you're going to get hurt. How do you deal with it?" And he said to me, "I learned to take fear and put it in a little place in my mind." And I said, "That's the key to Xander Cage. The fear is in a little place. He does not function in the world in our normal way of concern for his physical well-being. That is not in his equation, and that allows him to be free to do many of the things." That's Tony Hawk fooling around at Xander's party. So we call this the Xander Zone, and this is going to stand as the beginning point of this character. Who is he? What is he doing in life? What does he care about? He doesn't care about money, doesn't care about endorsements. He cares about his own addiction to adrenaline, and he's doing it for no other purpose but to thrill himself. And of course, this is going to change radically in the character arc of Xander Cage. About the tattoos on Vin's body. Vin is not tattooed. He has no tattoos. These were all designed by a series of skin artists that we worked with and applied in a new method by our makeup artist, or Vin's makeup artist, Christian Tinsley, which is more like a decaling process instead of the old airbrushing process. But obviously, to have sleeves like this, look at the X's, look at the eye on his shoulder, look at Fernando the Bull, look at the words chaos, look at the words Melchior on his stomach, look at the chaos symbol, look at the starbursts on his nipples, look at the different bands on his arm, look at the angry bull, the happy bull. These all had meanings for me and for Vin especially, who had to ascribe a history to his own body, which I think is very interesting about this character. Now, in this scene in the diner, like Sherlock Holmes, I give you all the clues. I try to tell you, you see what Xander sees, and you see this guy reading the Financial Times. You see this woman's shoes and legs. Now, if you haven't seen the film before, I won't give it away. But obviously, Mary Pat's legs are not beautiful. But that's misdirection by me. I'm having you look at the wrong thing. Because what's important are the shoes, not her legs. And that's the key that Xander sees that makes him smell a rat. Diner down near LAX. It's not the diner of Pulp Fiction, but it is an authentic 50s diner built in the 50s. And this is the beginning of Xander as a totally physically competent guy outside of extreme sports. That he literally is observant, he's fearless, he's physically powerful, and like I said, he's learned to put that fear in a small place in his mind. He functions in the world from a very fearless position. Now here's the introduction of the King of Cool, and this is the King of Cool butting heads with the Prince of Cool. And that's what I thought in casting Sam Jackson, that the pairing of these two men would create sparks, would create tremendous tension, interest, humor, and I would go to work every day that there was a Vin and Sam scene, and I couldn't wait to go, because I couldn't wait to see the kind of stuff the three of us could cook up on a set in a day. And I was never disappointed, and I was always delighted. There's the MacGuffin. He understands, like Sherlock Holmes, that those those would give her the pancakes. No waitress would do that, and so something was wrong, and he figures it out from there. This thing, I said, you're like John the Baptist, and in your quest to find the Messiah, you find Vin Diesel or Xander Cage. And I want to see that look in your eye. And look at Sam's eye now. Look at the look. It's not just a look. He is recognizing that he has found his man. Look at those eyes. That's a great actor at work. He tells you what he's saying, what he's thinking, what he's feeling, and he does it without a word. He's a young actor. Most of the times he's been cast as a pretty boy. I cut his hair, I darkened it from blonde, and he created there a very obnoxious, arrogant character who's going to be punished for that arrogance, as everyone is, by Xander Cage. Be arrogant to Xander Cage, you will get punished. Fun moments for me. The waitress who was so kind is the one who shoots him with the Datura knockout dart. And of course, there'll be more about these gimmicks later when we meet Shavers. This motif of starting each scene with the 3 X's on the back of his neck as Xander awakens to a new situation in each of these testing situations that he's brought into by the NSA. And the fun of the audience is, for the audience, I think, is that stylistically, every time you see the 3 X's, you know you're about to have another movement in the story. And part of the quest in this film was to jack up the narrative to a level far beyond the Fast and Furious, where sometimes I just say, well, it's faster and furiouser, but that I wanted to experiment with unspooling events at such a high speed that you couldn't go to the bathroom. One of my things to say to people is go to the bathroom before the movie begins, because I'm trying to make sure that you cannot leave during the film, because so much will happen. You have a sense that so much is going to go on that you will miss stuff, and you're not going to want to miss that, so consequently you'll be in a lot of pain. I'm sorry for that pain, but I'm happy whenever I see it. It means I did my job well. Here we're in a C-123. We're supposed to be in Colombia, but we're actually flying near the Lake Piru and Simi Valley areas outside of Los Angeles, which are still very undeveloped and a little bit wild, and where we could blade this runway for this big boat of a plane to do. This is called a LAPS extraction, low altitude parachute extraction system. This is how the Army and Air Force very often unload cargo. They never do it to people quite like this. And this is a movie. And in a movie, we try to bring you something new at all times. At every turn of the road, I'm trying to bring you new stunts and a new attitude, and take sort of old frameworks, old conventions, and one by one, blow them up. Plants are complete duplicates of coca plants, although they have none of the alkaline substance that makes cocaine. But we planted 4,000 of these in this drug plantation that we created near Lake Piru. One guy's trying to get out, one guy's trying to profit, and is too stupid to understand that the leaves don't amount to anything. And that's me, by the way, on the horse. I wanted to put some cracking walnut sounds because I got a compression fracture in my vertebrae from riding for 6 hours. I wanted you to hear. This is his portrait of a man whose ego allowed him to break his own back on the 3rd day of shooting. Anyway, I'm better now. Here we go again with the motif. We established Gold Tooth here, as we call him, and we're now in one of my favorite scenes, the torture barn, where a case of mistaken assumption that's been set up that this is somehow an amateur theatrical becomes very funny as we, the audience, know that it isn't kidding around with Danny Trejo, El Jefe. Those mountains were painted by a beautiful matte painter named Shannon at Digital Domain to be more like the mountains in Colombia. And of course I thought, well, if you were going to think it was a theatrical, who would show up to play El Jefe? Well, nobody better than the inimitable Danny Trejo, who is the central casting El Jefe and has been in many films like Spy Kids and Heat and so on, and millions of films, and just a tremendous actor. By a set of harnesses and wires, which we later removed. But that is not to say that this was pleasant, because all of the pressure of his body weight was suspended on his balls, to be blunt, and this could not have been pleasant plus it was 22 degrees out, and he's in a wife-beater t-shirt. So we are dealing with a very, very uncomfortable place. If you watch the mouths in the scene, you'll see breath come out of them. And that was to get us ready for the kind of torturous winter cold we were to face in Prague as the movie progresses. At the last minute, I thought of this idea of putting Vin on a pivot so that when he got hit, he could spin around. So I thought it was just more interesting. And it's just that kind of little detail that you try to do as a director to create something always a little different, little special. And Vin twirling like a game bird on a rotisserie was a good one. And here we again see the physical capability. These are 3 candidates, and they're all supposed to be able to go on this mission. Sam Jackson is trying to figure out which one of these 3 is fit to be the new breed of secret agent. Well, we don't have much doubt who it is. Ben did that backflip. He did so much of his own stunt work in this movie, more than he should have, and less than he wanted to do. I just couldn't let him do too much where the danger was beyond reasonable. This drug farm scene with these helicopter attacks was shot in 7 nights, and the amount of pyro in this scene, the amount of events, was what I like to do, which is to front load the movie with an intense action scene like the drag race in the Fast and Furious, and now this drug farm attack of the Colombian Army, testing these guys under combat conditions. And again, here's a guy, every man for himself. That's his attitude as he steals a bag of processed cocaine and tries to escape. Whereas Xander, forced to deal with a wounded man, and this is Vin again, no tricks. That building went up with about, I don't know how many hundreds of gallons of gasoline and dynamite and primer cord and C4, pieces of sheet metal flying everywhere that could cut your arm off. It was risky. And Vinny did all of the stuff. And now I look at some of this stuff with 5 helicopters in the air, 12 camera crews on the ground, and I am grateful that no one was hurt. We were not always so lucky, as I'll explain later in the film. A Vulcan cannon under that Huey helicopter, and every one of those shells that is ejected weighs a pound, and each round what costs $5, and it shoots 2,000 rounds a minute. This was Arnie Schmidt, the producer's least favorite scene. Thousands of dollars pouring out of the bottom of that Huey. But I had a ball because it was so cold. Every time a building blew up, we got a little bit of heat and made me warm for a second. That little up-angle shot was a Dean Semler special. He used to call them specials. I'd set all these cameras with him, and I'd come back from working with Vin, and I'd find that there'd be another camera set in some unique place, and more often than not, it caught a magic moment, like Vin up against that car, up against that upturned truck, and a helicopter flying right over his head. We begin a rapid editing style that integrates the action with the dynamism of a change of perspective. And I'll get into this a little more as we go. I want to talk about Chris Lebenzon and Paul Rubel, my 2 amazing editors. These are guys who've done all the Bruckheimer films that you know, all the way back to Top Gun, and Paul has done The Cell. The editor here is critical in how we unspool what's going to go on. Now watch this first jump. This is the Cubist jump. Look at the repeat of action, over again, the same shot, same angle, same moment, twisted, so that you get more of that experience than you do in a normal cut where the bike would go up, go over, and go down. You're allowed to look at the action from multi-perspectives at one time. There, a rack focus that tells you the problem. It's a barbed wire fence. What's he going to do? He's going to do Twitch Stenberg doing this jump with a Vin Diesel face replacement. You're dealing with, that's Vin actually riding it on a rig. But look at the different number of shots to tell you this one moment. It took less than 2 seconds, I've protracted it out to whatever it is, but these are the 12 or 13 different cameras set on each event and then edited to give you a stuttered, repeated perspective change so that you can enjoy the jump more than if it just went by in slow motion. Yes, again, the comeuppance of Goldtooth, another man who was arrogant to Xander Cage. He saves his friend and he gets his own revenge by doing a can over the guard tower. The move through the barbed wire fence was called a tabletop. These are true X Games moves. And if you watch the Extreme Sports Olympics in Philadelphia this year or any other ESPN special, you'll see guys throw these moves, throw Superman seat grabs, which you'll see later in Act 2, for real and for no purpose other than their balletic purity. Here, Twitch Stenberg jumps the drug lab, face replaced with Vin, but this is probably one of the largest explosions ever done in history, and we really did this live. This is really happening exactly as you see it. Feel it. I hope you have AC3. In that explosion was we had built a steel reinforced ramp and vectored all of the mortars and all the explosions away from that ramp. And even if they did catch that ramp, it was so supported that it would not happen. So Twitch felt heat, and as John Fraser said to him before he made the jump, see those guys? Ride right to them. And Twitch said, what are they? And they said, they're the guys with the fire extinguishers to put you out if it doesn't go right. And of course, nothing. He was just kidding, and I knew that we had a 100% chance of perfect action, and we did.
I finished in 2 minutes of break.
But we're always lucky, always lucky. Here we go again, King of Cool and Prince of Cool, and remember David sassed Xander in the diner. It's not good to sass Xander. Insults from Xander towards Gibbons, does not like him, resents him, hates authority, hates law enforcement, not a patriot, not interested in doing anything for anyone but himself and his own thrills. Now, handcuffs in this chaotic and crazy situation, about to be revealed. Why the government needs him, why he's vibrationally correct to go to that Rammstein world, and how Sam Jackson, how Augustus Gibbons is going to make him do it. What the drug farm looked like after the preceding scene, after we blew the shit out of it for 7 nights.
Kiss my
of the monologues written by writer Rich Wilkes for Sam. I love this Lions at the Zoo. I love the imagery and the way he slowly circles Vin. Now, notice a little trick I did. I put Vin on a mound. Now, at this point in the film, in the shot, you see that Sam looks smaller than Vin as he begins his premise. Xander looks like he's in control, that he's standing strong and firm in his resolution to not cooperate. Sam is shorter, but watch what happens as the scene progresses and Sam begins to move around Xander and their positions are suddenly reversed. It's a subtle thing, but it really does tell you the blocking of the scene supports the theme of the scene or the subtext of the scene. And that's very important if you're a movie director, that you're constantly using the visuals to reinforce the ideas. Now watch. Half a head taller than Xander. He's looking down at Xander. And that's a trick of just simply fixing the ground to allow that change of perspective. Also, Randy Edelman, my dear friend and great composer who wrote the music for Dragon, Dragonheart, Daylight, and now Triple X, is making comments in the music about Sam Jackson's theme, Xander Cage's Triple X theme, and little ideas that are now later in Prague going to become very much developed. Look how large Sam is now compared to Vin. They started out in the opposite proportion. I'm very happy with that subtle idea. This is another place where editing can make its statement. Sam Jackson asks a question answered by an image, not words. We can fill in the rest. He doesn't want to go to Leavenworth. He'll go to Prague and do his best to get home as quickly as possible, do as little as he can, and fulfill whatever requirements there are. And of course, those requirements are going to get more and more complicated as the film goes on. What can I say about Prague except that it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world? Certainly, in my opinion, the most beautiful city in Europe. It's Baroque, it's preserved back to the Middle Ages, and it's yet sort of mysterious because behind these facades, these elegant buildings, is a history that is not always wonderful and a present that is complex. The fall of the Soviet Union left many vacuums in Prague, in Central Europe, in the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic broke from Slovakia, and in that vacuum, the Russian mafia, the Croatian mafia, forces of all kinds of corruption and violence have moved in. So as we peel away the layers of Prague from the tourist view to the view Xander gets, we see more and more of the dynamic city it is. And here we meet Milan Sova, played by Richie Mueller, an actor from Germany, and a very talented guy who plays an arrogant weasel right from the first frame. I let his skin get oily. In fact, I applied glycerin to make him look sweaty and slippery and clammy. We gave him horrible clothes, all to create this character that Xander could use in the dynamic of the plot. One of my favorite shots. Dean wanted to light this scene strictly through the windows and to keep it very edgy and shadowy. But if you look at any given moment, it goes from half light to rim light to backlight to silhouette, and yet you feel that you're seeing the actors enough to understand what they're expressing. But most of all, you feel that this is sort of a dungeon, and that unlike spies of the past who check into the Four Seasons and immediately make love with the room service girl,
I'm going to a restroom. I'd finish a restroom break.
Xander Cage is being hosted very differently and none too comfortably. Also, you can check the breath in that scene and see how cold it was even inside. This is the theme from The Third Man, and the reason I'm using this theme is my homage to Carol Reed. Sir Carol Reed, the director of the great movie, the greatest film noir ever made, The Third Man, set in Vienna, an American, Joe Cotton, wandering around Vienna looking for his friend Harry Lime, played by the great Orson Welles, and the low, strafing hard light, the shadows, the sense of a mysterious European city as an American might see it. This was like a spirit guide to me and to Dean Semler, my cameraman, great cameraman, Academy Award-winning camera for Dances with Wolves, as we set out to frame this film. And I thought, what better way to let everyone know how we respect and love that film, but to use its theme song in this piece, and then to get on to the new world of Moby, in fact, here. And I'll talk about the soundtrack a little later because Kathy Nelson, my music supervisor, and I went to great pains to find the right tone of music, both the hard rock and roll, the vigorous American rock and roll, and the Euro sound of Rammstein and Orbital coming up in the techno rave, plus Moby and other groups that define the sound and the energy of the world of Xander Cage. Here's a good plot device. Xander has decided to plunge in recklessly, as he does everything, to get this stupid mission over. All he's supposed to do is set up a car deal and get to observe these people. So he plunges in, and again, he gets revenge on someone who has been arrogant to him, Sova, and uses this knowledge that he's a policeman to engender a certain amount of trust. So Sova is a sacrificial lamb to the overall good of the mission, but basically it's for the overall good of Xander, as everything is in the first 2 acts of this movie. Werner Dan, the sniper, is a German actor. He has obviously Mongolian blood. He has these almond-shaped eyes, and we create this idea of a guy who chain smokes, and that's going to become his downfall because I hate smoking. Cigarette smoking makes me sick. I hate it. I hate seeing people do it. I wanted to use this movie to show that smoking will kill you, as you'll see. Peter Yakel and Jan Filipensky, both 6'8", are Czech actors and stuntmen. Peter Yakel, the blonde who plays Kolya, Georgi's brother, was placed 13th in the Olympics in jiu-jitsu. And one of the nicest things that happened is he told me that one of the films that inspired him, and this was before he knew I had directed it and written it, was Dragon, and that kept him going after a back injury, and that movie made him come out of the hospital and compete and place 13th, and I was very touched by that. That's not why he got the part, however. Here we're in a 15th century cistern of a ruined castle, 90 miles outside of Prague. We're in the middle of winter. It's again freezing. We're in a damp basement. This is actually the castle. We retrofitted it with a Philippe Stark kind of design to be a kind of hip club. Georgi's cover as a Russian mafioso is that he owns nightclubs. Now, nightclubs are very tricky to get on film because most of the time they look phonier than all shit, but I am a clubber and I have spent a lot of time in these places, and I wanted to capture a variety of environments which made you want to go to these clubs or find out where they were. I hope I succeeded. I quite like this one. The limestone laid by serfs 500 years ago, and the wardrobe, clothes, the attitude, the music, all from the 21st century. I just like this combination throughout the film of the very old meets the very, very new. And again, that's metaphorical to what we're doing here. We're taking a 40-year-old tradition of secret agent movies, and we're trying to make it new. Notice the anarchy symbol Xander is wearing around his neck, because Georgi is in fact an anarchist, and this is one of the legitimate Russian philosophies that believes that government is the corrupting force of mankind, that if you got rid of government, all government, man would be free and man would be good. It's an idealistic philosophy. It simply does not work. It's ridiculous, but it is a legitimate philosophy, and the anarchistic aspects of these two men are part of the bond that makes the villain take the leap of faith to somewhat trust this newcomer, this outsider, who is famous and his brother's hero, and he's curious about him because it must be lonely being a villain. Who are your friends? Everybody kisses your ass. You never know. Anyway, bitches come, probably a phrase that will come into our language and make sure that the feminists are on my case for the rest of my life. Talks about their successes in movies or things that went well. I want to show something that didn't go well. Here, Xander answers the advanced Motorola phone. That's a video phone. Motorola does not yet make this phone to do this, but I had to improvise. The communicator that was designed was delivered a day before we were to shoot the scene of Xander in bed, and it looked terrible to me after months of design. In a quick improvisation on my part, I took what was the communicator, and later you'll see it as the detonator that Shaver's designed, and even says it basically is a Star Trek looking thing. It didn't look right, but it looks fine to be the detonator. I grabbed from producer Neil Moritz this Motorola phone and made that the communicator, made the communicator the detonator, made the chip box the thing that the first spy, the Tuxedo Man, used, the transmitter for that chip, the partially loaded chip, and shuffled everything around to work, which is something that could have been a big crisis, which is what is this thing that he communicates with Gibbons on? This is the only way the two lead characters communicate in the middle part of the film. It's a very important prop. It's an example of how something that small can derail a train as big as this movie if the details aren't correct. And the details in this kind of movie are everything, from the sunglasses Vin is wearing, to the communicator, to every gadget, gizmo, car, jet, and even to the coolest snowboards. It's important that the details be right. Vin really wanted to have a little style of a hip-hop-y kind of star as for the character. And Sonia Hayes, our great wardrobe designer, dressed him in a way that was both realistic and slightly theatrical. And I loved that big Gucci bear coat. I thought it made him look like a mountain man, and it was part of the imagery that I loved. I don't think many English spies could carry off a big American fur coat like that, certainly not with long johns and a bare chest. Here's the introduction of Michael Roof, who's known on the comedy circuit as Chicken. He's a very funny and inventive comedian, and to cast him in a creation like this of a MIT graduate, who preppy kind of guy who has a whole command of the physical world and the gimmicks that are going to be needed, but has a fantasy level of being an agent, and what would he want in the field if he were in fact a field agent. And so that sort of motivates his character. And if this film is successful and we are making a sequel, which I hope it is, and I call it XXX squared because it'll be times itself, believe me, in scale and intensity, Michael will certainly be back as Shavers. Seeing this dart over and over, and it's all to set up this one joke. So, all the times you've seen this dart is so that when Shavers does that, and you realize that, this is the guy who created the thing that has put Xander under a few times, there's a laugh, and it's all part of the details of narrative directing to keep the story straight, because if you have any confusion whatsoever, the joke doesn't work. This is an interesting thing, this exegesis of his ability with a gun. It was very important to us to explain how a guy who's not an agent might even know anything about guns. So coming from the generation he does, coming from the world that he does, first-person shooter video games are the sole source of Xander's knowledge. Here comes another of our good digital domain effects, these penetrator binoculars, the idea of, as you set focus on a normal pair of binoculars, you can go all the way to the bone, to the muscle, or to the lingerie. Anyway, it's a thing that would be useful for all of us as we grow up or grow old, because, well, you know why. Anyway, this Band-Aid bomb came to me in my sleep, in a dream. I actually dreamt about a licorice twirled around itself with a little hard candy inside, which my mother used to buy for me, a penny candy. And because we've been using so much primer cord in the drug farm, I had primer cord on my brain. And I thought of what would happen if you twirled primer cord around a detonator. Now, the thing in Shaver's hands that looks like a prop from Star Trek, that was supposed to be the communicator. That was supposed to be the Motorola thing. And the Motorola thing was just an offer from Motorola that we weren't going to take them up on until that little thing became a problem. Here, again, you'll see subtitles throughout the picture. They're speaking Russian. The idea is, of course, to give it the authenticity. And even when they speak among themselves, they start in Russian and transition into English so that we're not just doing accents throughout the movie. There's a legitimacy to the fact that Xander is in a strange land. He's a fish out of water. He's definitely a stranger in a strange land. But here, Vin Diesel, who through Fast and Furious is no stranger to cars, is quite at home in a world of about $3 million worth of Ferraris. We had guards from the people who lent us these Ferraris standing there protecting each car. Anytime a crew person got near a car, he had to deal with a guy about 6'8" who's a niet, which meant get away from the car. Here's Asia. I love Asia. I love the way she looks, but I love the intelligence that you'll see beaming from her eyes throughout this picture. She is the smartest actress I've ever worked with, and not only talented and unusually beautiful, but brilliant in literature. She writes, she directs, she's a poet, she's a photographer, she's a music producer. She's also 27 and a mother of a 1-year-old child. She is an extraordinary woman, and I wanted someone that Xander would have trouble dealing with, would not know how to work like an American girl. And believe me, Asia is no day at the beach. She can throw you a lot of curves, and keep you off balance. And that's true whether you're the actor or the director. But in the end, it comes out just right. Is one of the stars of our picture, the 67 Pontiac GTO. It's a hell of a car for a hell of a man. Xander does not belong in a rice rocket. Xander's a big guy. He deserves to be in a muscle car. I had him in the Charger in the Fast and the Furious. I love the GTO. I wanted that car, and there it is. And as you'll see later, it gets retrofitted beautifully. This is one of the jokes that a location determines. I found this factory warehouse, these huge 20-foot high windows in this level, and I thought, what if Shavers goes to clean the window? Sova goes to clean the window, and the windows come crashing down. The script called for his foot to go through the roof. I thought that would look very silly, and my idea was these windows, and that gave us a nice big moment to kick this off on. These scenes, I used 2 cameras shooting these 2 actors simultaneously, so everything is a perfect match. Their emotions, the way you see Xander is improvising. He's not sure what to do now. They're basically going to go kill whoever this is that's invaded this meat. And Xander is like, his brain now is revving at a higher torque than the GTO, trying to figure out how to get out of this mess, because he has to prove to Yorgi that he's a tough guy, that he's an outlaw, but he can't allow Sova to be killed, or he's party to that. And the solution, of course, is the blood splatter dart and Shaver's service revolver, field revolver, and a nice Brody thrown by Vin. Bang, Richie smacking into that glass that was not designed to break. I had a little bit of heart failure when he hit it that hard and it broke, but it makes for a great shot. The plot thickens as Xander sees that he's not getting approval from Yelena for having killed this cop, and he begins to wonder why a mafia chick would be negative about something that should normally be thought of as all in a day's work in this world of fiction. Anyway, I originally shot a scene where the Ivans come running out and Sova wakes up, but in the editing I thought, Chris and I were talking, wouldn't it be cool if for a minute there you thought maybe Sova was dead if you weren't following Shaver's monologue? And wouldn't that be interesting that the villain and the hero at this point, or the anti-hero, because I consider Xander Cage the all-American anti-hero in a great tradition of Brando and James Dean and Bogart. That's a tradition Vin fits very well in. Wouldn't it be interesting if the anti-hero and the villain actually at one point in the movie were almost interchangeable? And this is the section from You're All Right, Yorgi, inside the GTO, through the techno rave. They are almost the same man and with the same ideas. Now, I told you I had anti-smoking sentiments. Here is Xander saying that cigarette's going to kill you one day, and Kirill, the sniper, played by Werner Dan, saying essentially, I don't care. Ooh, Asia, show me that again. It's like setting up something that's going to happen in the third act. The movie is constructed with many, many setups that get paid off as the film goes on. And you'll see, I'll begin to point them out, because the first part of the movie is setting them all up, and the second part of the movie is paying them all off. The nation of Chechnya and the collapse of the Soviet regime is very important thematically. He's a man who believed in communism, believed in the Soviet ideals, went to war, into the ugly war that we don't mention, but it is Chechnya, and saw so many people die, and only to find out that his country's government completely collapsed, embraced capitalism, and he began to see that these political philosophies, governments, are all useless. How do they refer to it? They don't refer to it in terms of big philosophical terms. We refer to it, and this came from Rich Wilkes from the first draft, from Anarchy Burger by the Vandals. And it's very important to be able to get some of this political stuff in, but instead of being boring, I tried to use these touchstones that Rich wrote, that it comes actually from a punk group and a punk song that some people may know, but even if they don't, you get the gist of these political ideas. Part of this is a place in Prague where they test mega electricity. It's an actual place. It's not a club, although I'd love to have a club like this or go to a club like this. I thought, well, why don't we go here? Because this is the scene where the sparks will fly between Vin and Asia. Casting director Rana Kress and I had searched 7 countries with 3 other casting directors, interviewed 500 girls to finally find Asia Argento, the extraordinary Argento. The techno rave, the sparks are flying, the lightning's shooting, electricity's in the air, electricity's between the leads. There you go. Anyway, this is Orbital, great techno artists who pretty much had a hand in inventing the techno genre starting in the late 80s and are still going today. They're fantastic guys, and this track they wrote for XXX. Here, if you'll notice that, you can go back on your DVD, you'll see that most of this sequence is shot in one continuous shot per moment, with the help of my favorite tools, the Techno Crane and the Libra head. The camera constantly swings from one perspective to another and encroaches on the subject as the scene develops, and without a cut.
Did you enjoy that?
That her lip was covered with saliva, and we had to do, one of our visual effects was to remove that so that it looked more graceful. Asia told me she quite enjoyed the experience. The kiss, not the visual effect. This is Vranov, a real Baroque castle, 3 hours outside of Prague in the mountains, but not in those mountains. Part of the plot calls for a lot of beautiful asses. No, part of the plot calls for this to be in an alpine setting, allowing us to do some snowboards and some little sort of small avalanche tricks later on in the third act. But for now, we establish the idea that Georgi's fortress is guarded. It's impregnable, it's got surveillance cameras, it's got weapons, and it's got women. So it's a great place to get locked in for a weekend. When you visit Georgi's, you hope for a snowstorm, a blizzard, so you just have to stay in and play board games. At any rate, now the hero and the villain actually, for a while, appear to be friends. And I think at this point in this plot, I said to Vin, if you had to choose between spending time with Sam Jackson or spending time with Martin Shawkish, you'd pick Martin, because this world is dope. This world is cool. Most expensive dress per square inch. I think it's Roberto Cavalli. The theme, the old grandma type antiques, all kinds of porcelain and pottery that's collector's items, smashed by a red bowling ball, just because it's out with the old and in with the new, and that's part of the theme of XXX. The castle in the far background, that is Vranov is quite a famous castle. We were lucky to be given use of it, and it added a great deal of depth and scale and culture to the crazy world of Georgi in this film. Another location, only an hour outside of Prague, another castle where they had better bedrooms and better corridors. And so in this length of nothing of a cut, we move hundreds of miles and a continuous sense of interior. Oh, yes, interior. This is my idea of a housewarming present. You know, when you visit someone's home, it's nice when they give you this as you turn in for the night, because it makes you want to, you know, visit there often. Great time with this scene. These candles were originally going to be for the cathedral in which the Desanctified Church where Rammstein played, but we decided to go with much bigger fire effects. And as we were getting ready to do this scene, I remembered that we had thousands of these cathedral candles, and we ran back to Prague and got them and lit the scene primarily by candlelight. Only someone like Dean Semler could quite manage to do this, and only someone like Sarah could quite manage to do this. And Vin, of course, had to do this, and I had to watch, and it was a hard thing to say cut. In fact, I just let the film roll out, and everybody went home, and I guess Vin decided when the scene was going to end. My favorite techno crane shots. Watch the way the camera moves and floats. In the editing, we would cut to different perspectives, but basically this is a continuation of the same shot. I like to work in multi-camera. I use 2 to 3 at all time. Not only was I inspired by Kurosawa, a great genius, my mentor, my spirit guide, but I think in action films, the changing of perspective is constantly critical. Here again is another techno crane shot. I love the idea. Watch her make the knight's move of chess. Okay, that's just, and I did this set with the great designer Gavin Bouquet, our production designer, did Star Wars episodes 1 and 2, to be like a chessboard. And there is going to be a little bit of a chess game between these two guys, our heroes, as they try to outplay each other and outmaneuver each other. And with a little nod towards Kodak and their new shareware program, get the idea that Yelena's up to something. We don't know what, and we won't know what till the third act. But again, this will be paid off. I will do a fandango, a little bit of a tango type dance here between them. So the guns and the disarming.
Okay, I'm gonna continue for the time for anything. Next part coming soon.